Welcome to the Teaching You to Fish podcast, financial literacy for the rest of us. My name is Carl Fish, and I'm the host of this podcast. This is episode 4, Spending and Saving Part 2, the 3 big rocks of spending: food, housing, and transportation. In episode 3, we completed the growth of savings calculator exercise that demonstrated how much even seemingly small changes can amount to over time due to the power of compound interest. Those small changes are important. I'm not someone who thinks you should just ignore the small stuff because they can result in meaningful differences over time, as we saw in episode 3. But it is also true that for most people there are 3 main areas where they do the majority of their spending: food, housing, and transportation. These are often referred to as the 3 big rocks of spending. This refers to the rocks, pebbles, and sand analogy, the origin of which is unclear, but was made popular by Stephen Covey. The analogy demonstrates the importance of prioritizing your most critical decisions, the rocks, over less critical ones, the pebbles and sand. Covey and others illustrate this by having a large but empty glass jar, and then beside it a collection of big rocks, medium-sized pebbles, and sand. The typical demonstration is to put all the sand in first, and then try to fit in the pebbles and the rocks. But they won't all fit. You'll run out of room. But if you put the big rocks in first, and then the pebbles, and then the sand, it will fit, because the pebbles and the sand will fill in the spaces around the rocks. For our purposes, food, housing, and transportation are the big rocks, the critical decisions you must be intentional about and get right to be financially successful. If you get one or more of these wrong, it won't matter how much of the pebbles and sand, such as the smaller spending items we discussed in episode 3, you get right. By making a mistake on one or more of the rocks, your financial plan won't fit in the jar that is your budget. Stretching the analogy just a bit, but hopefully you get the point. Let's look at each of those rocks. We'll start with food. Obviously, food is extremely important. We all have to eat, and hopefully we all will eat reasonably healthy food, not only because it's good for us, but because it will help us avoid missing work and higher medical expenses, which is good for us financially. Coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, we experienced a high rate of inflation that was especially noticeable to many people at the grocery store. This felt even worse because inflation for the previous 10 years had been so muted, and because over even longer periods of time, food prices have generally increased less than overall inflation and wages. As an example, about 43% of a family's budget in the U.S. in 1900 was for food. By 1950, it was about 29%. By 2003, it was about 13%, and by 2019, it was about 10%. So when food prices at the grocery store went up quickly in 2022, it was a shock for many people. But as is almost always the case, it's important to zoom out a bit. Not only are we spending a smaller proportion of our budget on food, but the quantity and quality of food we have has increased dramatically. Or at least we have the capability of choosing higher quality food. And our behaviors have also shifted dramatically, primarily in the number of times we eat out or order in each week. Eating out typically costs between 5 and 20 times what eating the same meal at home would cost. Probably not surprisingly, not only is eating out, or ordering in, more expensive than making your own meals at home, the cost of those items has increased faster than the cost of food at the grocery store. By 2023, 55% of all food spending was on food away from home. And that's just the cost of the food. It doesn't include additional costs like the cost of parking and transportation to the restaurant. Like all other financial decisions, you should make food decisions in the context of the good life you want to live and what truly makes you happy. Think carefully about food and the value, to you, of eating out. While there's nothing wrong with eating out occasionally, it is significantly more expensive than eating at home. Many Americans have gotten in the habit of eating as many meals or more out as they do at home, and that's had disastrous effects on their finances. Evaluate whether what you really value is eating the food at the restaurant or eating good food with family and good friends. If it's the latter, you can almost certainly spend much less money, eat just as well, and actually have a better time at home. The second big rock is housing. The so-called American dream tends to include owning your own, large, house with a nice lawn. The conventional wisdom is that renting is throwing your money away, while owning your own home is an investment. But like most conventional wisdom, it's not quite that simple. While it's true that, historically at least, houses have generally appreciated over time and people tend to make money on their primary residence, it's not true that they are particularly good investments. Historically, owning your primary home typically has earned about 1 to 2% above the rate of inflation. While that's nice, it pales in comparison to the roughly 7% above inflation that investing in equities has returned. And renting comes with many non-financial advantages over owning. When you rent, you are not the one responsible when something goes wrong. If something breaks, someone else is responsible for getting it fixed and for paying for it. And you don't have to keep up with or pay for general maintenance items. If you don't like your neighborhood or your neighbors, you can pretty easily move somewhere else reasonably quickly, which is much more difficult and financially painful to do if you own your home. So buying a house should not be based on it being a good investment or being easier in your day-to-day life. It's a lifestyle choice. For many people, owning their own home is the American dream and is a critical part of their good life. If that's you, great. Just don't try to rationalize it as something you have to do in order to be financially responsible. If you do decide to buy a house, try to right-size it the first time. And definitely don't buy unless you think you'll stay in that home for at least 10 years. Every time you move up to a new house, the transaction costs can be expensive, not to mention the increased time and spending associated with moving. That doesn't necessarily mean buy the biggest house you can afford. It means trying to figure out what size house you will need for the size of family you'll eventually have, and then waiting to purchase until you can afford that house. And while you can't control what the current interest rate for mortgages is, you can pay attention to mortgage rates after you buy and refinance if they drop enough. Typically, a drop of 1% or more makes it worth refinancing. The location of your house is also critically important. While historically, location has been about the value of your home, I would suggest you think about location just as much in terms of the value of your time and the quality of your good life. Research consistently shows that commute times are negatively correlated with and are one of the biggest impediments to happiness. The longer the commute, the less happy people are. This is a huge issue that most folks don't think enough about when choosing where to live. Yes, people will look for a house within a reasonable commute of their work, but you should give much more thought to what reasonable really is. In addition to robbing you of time and happiness, commutes are expensive. Don't assume you have to own a car or multiple cars. Think carefully about where you're going to live in relation to where you work. This one decision, finding a place to live near where you work, can be the deciding factor in your financial success. So that brings us to our third big rock, transportation. Most folks have no idea how much they truly spend on their cars over their lifetime. Eliminating or reducing this expense increases both happiness and financial well-being. Let's take a look at what your car and/or your commute is costing you. Open this Google spreadsheet by typing in the link or clicking on the link in the slides. It will ask you to make a copy so that you have an editable version. Click Make a Copy. You can choose to either complete the first tab, Option 1, the cost of commuting, or the second tab, Option 2, yearly cost. You can, of course, choose to complete both. I'll step you through both tabs. The first tab, Option 1, looks specifically at the cost of your commute for an individual person or vehicle. You'd want to do this multiple times for multiple people or multiple vehicles. You should change the numbers in the green outlined cells to match your situation. In cell B1, enter your one-way commute to work in miles. In cell B2, enter the number of days per month you commute to work. In cell B3, you should enter either your current monthly car payment, if you financed the car and are currently making a payment, or the total purchase price of the car divided by the number of months you plan on keeping it. For example, if you purchased a car for $48,000 and are not making car payments and plan on keeping it for 10 years, you would take $48,000 divided by 120, the number of months in 10 years, and enter in $400. In cell B7, enter in any regular monthly parking costs related to your commute. And in cell B8, enter in any recurring monthly miscellaneous costs, such as toll roads, car washes, or similar. The spreadsheet will then automatically calculate your monthly cost in cell B10 and your yearly cost in cell B11. The next section looks at the opportunity cost associated with the time you spend on your commute. The idea is that your time is valuable to you, either intrinsically or because you could use that time to earn additional money. In cell B14, put in the hourly rate for what you believe your time is worth to you, or alternatively, the hourly rate you think you could earn if you use that time doing other paid work. In cell B15, put in the one-way time you spend on your commute in minutes. The spreadsheet will then automatically calculate your monthly opportunity cost in cell B17 and your yearly opportunity cost in cell B18. This is intended to illustrate that the cost of your commute is not just the cost related to the car, but also the cost related to the value of your time. Some people may not want to include this metric. If you don't, simply set those cells to 0 and move on. In cell B21, enter in your assumed annual rate of return on investments. It defaults to 7%. In cell B22, enter in the number of years you will invest this money. This defaults to 30 years. You can change this to whatever you'd like, but using the same logic as we used in episode 3 with the growth of savings calculator, I would likely keep it at 30 or even more. Once you've entered in all your numbers, the spreadsheet will calculate the value of what your investments would be if you invested these costs of commuting instead. That's in cell B24. With the example numbers I used, that turns out to be more than 1.6 million. If you prefer, you may want to complete the second tab instead, option 2, yearly cost. In cell B4, enter the total number of miles you drive each year. In cell B5, again, enter in either your monthly car payment, if you finance the car, or the total purchase price divided by the number of months you anticipate keeping the car, the same calculation as in the first tab. Cells B6 and B7 are also the same as the first tab. Cells B13 and B14 are also the same as the first tab as well. This tab does not include the opportunity cost calculation like the commute tab did. Then cell B16 shows the value of what your investments would be if you had invested these costs instead. With the example numbers I used, that turns out to be over $1.58 million. At this point, some people may be wondering what the point of this is, saying to themselves, well, I don't have a choice, I have to drive to work. That may indeed be true, but I think that's also letting yourself off the hook a bit too easily. First, there may be ways to decrease your commute distance and time. As I talked about earlier, choosing to live closer to your work has a huge impact not only on your time, but on your finances. So it should be part of your decision-making process about where to live and where to work. Second, you should think carefully about what type of vehicle you actually need. In the United States, SUVs and heavy-duty pickup trucks are really popular. But most people don't need those capabilities for their daily commute, only for occasional use. Consider purchasing a more economical vehicle, both in terms of purchase price and operating costs, and on the occasions when you actually need the SUV or pickup, rent one. You'll come out way ahead in the end. The spreadsheet assumed the average IRS rate of 70 cents per mile, but if you buy a smaller, more economical car, your costs will be lower than that average. And as I record this, buying an electric vehicle is probably the best choice, not only for the environment, but for your finances, as they have a much lower total cost of ownership. Third, one place where conventional wisdom is usually correct is buying used vehicles versus new. The quality of cars has increased dramatically in the last 20 years, so buying a 3, 5, or 8-year-old car is not that risky these days and can save you a lot of money in upfront costs, insurance, and license and registration fees. This is especially helpful if you are also making choices that minimize how much you have to use the car, as that will increase its effective lifespan. Buy used, buy economical, drive less, and keep for as long as it runs. These choices will have huge positive effects on your finances and your happiness. Fourth, if at all possible, try to avoid taking out a loan for a car purchase. While a car loan might, or might not, be a necessity for your very first car purchase, if you are intentional about your car purchases and expenses, as well as the rest of your finances, that should be the last car loan you ever need. You should be able to save up what you need for future car purchases, especially if you buy used, and minimize the wear and tear on your vehicles by reducing the number of miles you drive them. As Mr. Money Mustache says, you should never even spend all your money on a car, let alone more than all your money. So why does everyone still get car loans? Finally, consider abandoning your car for your commute if it's possible. Many folks live close enough, if they are intentional about choosing where to live, where they could walk, bike, or take public transportation to work each day, or at least most days. Especially now with affordable e-bikes, biking to work is a legitimate option for many more people than it used to be. It will not only save you a ton of money, it would also improve your health. I've listed lots of additional resources on the slides to explore optimizing your car-related decisions. If you are taking notes throughout this course, take a screenshot of your completed spreadsheet and add it to your notes for reference. I'd also suggest adding a link to your copy of the spreadsheet so that you can return to it if you want to. Then perhaps write a paragraph or two, or more, reflection on this exercise, summarizing your current thinking about food, housing, and/or car ownership. If you're comfortable sharing your reflection, there are several ways to do that. If you're watching or listening to this on Spotify or YouTube, then you can leave your thoughts and/or your feedback and questions in the comments. You can also always reach out to me directly on social media or via email. I'm Carl Fish on Blue Sky, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, or you can email me directly at carlfish@gmail.com. Don't assume you have to buy a house or a car, and don't assume you have to go out to eat to have a good time. If you do, don't assume you have to spend as much on those things as others think you do. And pay very careful attention to the location of where you live compared to where you work. It's important enough to both your finances and your happiness that you should consider changing either where you live or where you work to minimize your commute and your expenses. It's truly that important. In our next episode, we'll talk about bank accounts. Some of you may roll your eyes at this and say, "What's there to learn?" As it turns out, you just may learn enough to make you want to switch banks.